Hi, good afternoon, everybody, those online from their systems and those sitting in the room. I'm Vijay Kumar from Austrade. We'll run you through a quick presentation about giving you an overview of the projects in India and various upcoming opportunity within those big projects and how you can look at tapping into these opportunity. Just a word of caution before I start. So I don't want to boggle you guys with the big numbers of billion, $1 million. Yes, India, everything is scale-wise is quite big, but there is enough room for big players to small players to get a pie of the larger cake that we have on offer in the Indian water resource management sector. So just to give you a quick overview of the India water resource potential, many of you may have seen this many times if you have traveled to India and met with various stakeholders. So India has got around 20 major river basins. There's a couple of infamous. One is the Kaveri, which you may have heard about the disputes among states fighting on the river water among 3 states, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala over the water. So thankfully, just to resolve the dispute, there has been a very good development as far as water reforms in India is concerned. Dispute resolution tribunal, unlike different tribunals for different river basins. So it will be one single river tribunal which will take care of all the river disputes, and the order of the tribunal will be final. It cannot be challenged even in the Supreme Court of India. So that's a big development which happened last month, that is Feb 2007. Just to give you an idea, this shows that although we have water availability 656 BCM, but as per the research done by International Water Management Institute, the demand is going to go up and the pressure on the water resource is growing up mainly on 2 factors: irrigation and the growing urbanization, and which is obviously trying to get a pie from the irrigation part. So India has a challenge, dual challenge of one, keeping up with the growing urbanization as well as growing enough food to feed the growing population. So that's a dual challenge, which thankfully India has moved on to a water reform journey in last 6 months or so with support from the multilateral agencies as well. And that's where we see Australia as a very important player. We do have a very good reputation in India as far as the expertise that is required and being sought from Australia. Although there is a competition, I cannot say there are other countries which are also trying to knock, but we do have very good reputation, particularly on the upper end of the water value chain, like basin planning, flood modeling, flood forecasting kind of expertise. And many of us have seen the delegations visiting India to Australia from India, I think last 5-6 years. Many senior delegations also come, and they are quite aware of what we as Australian water industry can offer to India in this journey of water reforms. Some of the quick key issues in water reform management sector that we see is the increasing competition. As I mentioned, recently we saw a few disputes around the Kaveri River Basin, states fighting over the water uses. There has been increasing incident of flooding. For example, we saw heavy floods in down south Tamil Nadu almost a year ago, which led to stopping of all the public services, airports, as well as we saw late 2014 heavy floods in Kashmir. Just to give you an idea of the flood, that particular area in Jammu and Kashmir receives average rainfall of around 70 millimeter, but in that particular 1 week they got around close to 600 millimeter of rain, and that led to a massive flooding issue, huge property damage across the states, mostly covering 22 districts of Jammu and Kashmir. Water quality is another big challenge in India because of there are regulations in place, but it's more about monitoring those implementation of those regulations. And major issues of water quality deterioration is the industrial pollution, urban sewage going untreated into the river and water bodies, which is leading to issues of degrading water quality. And the other main challenge for degrading water quality is also the reduced environmental flow in the rivers. So that's why the dilution which used to happen in the past of the pollution coming in that is not getting the proper dilution, and that's also one of the important factor contributing to deteriorating water quality in our river bodies. Especially on the coastal areas, on the east coast side, primarily Odisha and other states, they are suffering huge issues of salinity into the groundwater, which is basically coming from the coastal areas and hampering the agricultural productivity. And although India has been propagating drip irrigation and other measures to improve the water use efficiency in irrigation areas, but that's still a long way to go. Reason being free availability of electricity, and that's why flood irrigation is still common in many areas. Almost we are dependent on an average across the country. Almost 60% of our water demand comes through groundwater, which is used for agriculture, even for drinking purpose in urban areas, and also industries also use groundwater uncontrolled. We will come on what is happening on the groundwater reforms front. So just to give you a quick idea, till date, as of now, the water resources project in India is around valued at 5 billion projects, majorly World Bank funded project. I have not counted the ADB and JICA funded project, which is primarily focused on the urban water supply front. These are projects which are related to integrated water resources management, covering the uses like the cities and irrigation primarily. And I'll be covering in my presentation few projects. The most important one is the National Hydrology Project, which is a key focus area for Australia with involvement of AWP and a couple of experts from AWP already working with Ministry of Water, Central Water Commission back in India, and through the World Bank on helping them in technical issues and giving technical inputs for various components of the National Hydrology Project. We have also been asked to be part of the capacity building component of National Hydrology Project, which we will see later on as we move on to the presentation. There is a new project which is about to be sanctioned, that's called the Maharashtra Project on the Climate Change, Climate Resilience Agriculture. This has been triggered because this particular state of Western India is prone to droughts, and you may also heard in the news there has been a lot of farmers suicide in this area because of droughts, and we also saw a couple of power plants closed during drought season because of non-availability of water. So that leads to overall infrastructure crippling in this area, and hence this project was conceptualized by state government of Maharashtra with funding from the World Bank, covering around 4,000 villages and help them improve and tackle the issues of climate change and address the bigger droughts and how they can cope up and design agricultural strategies, including aquifer recharging to sort of improve their livelihood option that's available to them. As I mentioned, Jammu and Kashmir up in North India, they saw a huge flood in the later half of 2014, primarily across 22 districts, and that's where they approached Government of India, which in turn approached the World Bank, and they sanctioned a project to address the flood issue and disaster recovery in this state, primarily focusing on two big rivers, Jhelum and Tavi, entering Jammu and Kashmir. And since the dependency on the groundwater in India is very high, as I mentioned earlier, almost 60%. So Government of India is already running a program on national aquifer mapping and management. That's where the World Bank has further added on to the existing project of Government of India with a $1 billion funding that will go primarily towards addressing the institutional reforms in groundwater management and monitoring, and also support the ongoing aquifer mapping project for whole of India. This particular project, the new additional funding from the World Bank on groundwater will primarily focus around 7 states, mostly the central part of India where groundwater is exploited. We are in a position to reach a stress level. If you go by the figure of the Government of India, it says that by 2025 these regions will be there will be a demand supply mismatch in these regions, and that's why it is very important to look at the groundwater reserves. This also has a component of managed aquifer recharge, which we will see later on. Then the other big project which is yet to be approved but to be expected within a couple of months from the World Bank, that's called Dam Rehabilitation and Improvement Program DRIP Phase 2. Phase 1 is running about another 1 year for it to go. It was focused around 261 dams in India, helping them with the dam break analysis and doing the complete assessment and also improving through some of the construction work and repairing of these dams. DRIP Phase 2 is all about expanding the project across 5,000 dams across India and moving on to improvement program to an asset management mode, so that and build in-house capability from asset management perspective. Then there are a couple of other projects like National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project, Phase 2, Watershed Management Project, and then the National Ganga River Basin Project, which is the most publicized and well-known project, which is lagging behind. Out of 1 billion given by the World Bank, hardly 200 million has been spent till date because of many reasons, including the political reason is one of the key bottleneck in implementing this project. So I'll take you through a couple of these important projects, primarily National Hydrology Project. This is one of the benchmark projects as far as India water resource reforms are concerned. The idea is to have a complete water resource management across India, helping all the state. India saw a hydrology project Phase 1 and Phase 2 in 2005 till 2009, which was implemented across few states in down south and western India. Now this NHP National Hydrology Project will be implemented across India. Idea is to have real-time monitoring of both surface water, groundwater, as well as precipitation data coming in from states, and then merging into something called National Water Information Center, which will have real-time information of all the data coming in. This is a $700 million project with 50% funding coming from the World Bank, 50% from Government of India, no contribution from the states. That's key point to note here. So that this particular model has been adopted so that it becomes difficult to get states on board and asking funding from them as well. And as we have in Australia, water is a state subject, and it's a challenge to get states on board in a project like this, where there are always a couple of disputes in states on river basin. So that's one of the major challenges, and that's where this formula has been adopted, to have 100% funding coming from the federal government rather than asking money from the state government. This project has multiple components. I'll run you through quickly each component to give you an idea of what all each component consists of. So the first major component is to get the data. So data collection is the biggest focus, so that although there are few equipments which were installed as part of hydrology project Phase 1 and Phase 2, but that was only done across 9 states across India, and this will be across the complete range of India, right from east, west, and north, south. So that involves installation of automatic weather stations, rain gauges, snow gauges, river discharge meters in rivers, water quality metering stations, piezometer for groundwater quality and levels, and then all the tanks, dams, and reservoirs will have real-time telemetry data coming in that will merge at the state level, and every state will have a state water data center in the state, which will get these data. They will use for their own purpose, and at the same time relay the data at the National Water Information Center. So the entire structure has been designed in such a way that the data will be simultaneously relayed both to the National Water Information Center as well as to the State Water Data Center, rather than depending on the state to send them filtered data which may not serve the purpose. The second component of the National Hydrology Project is the National Water Information System, which is the key component. In order to enable that, the data which will be coming from the Hydromet network station, which will be installed, it will also have data coming in from the digital topographic survey, which is about to be carried out. Fund has been allocated to the Survey of India. They have floated a consulting to design the tender documents, and they will also provide them. We have other remote sensing data which is already available with institutions like ISRO and National Remote Sensing Laboratories in Hyderabad. plus the data which will be coming in on the various hydrologic modeling at the state and also at the basin level. One of them we'll see it has been floated. The third component is more about the water resource operation and planning of the National Hydrology Project, which involved decision support system for flood and water resource management in river basins, irrigation operation and management primarily around canal automation and water allocation for irrigation purposes. Groundwater management is a key focus area to understand the variation in the groundwater over a period of year and how groundwater is also helping reach us the river waters. And then there are purpose-driven studies which are part of this. This will be primarily floated by state water resource departments, depending upon the issues in different states. For example, you will have states floating issues regards to sediments in the Himalayan river coming in on the eastern side of the state, eastern states. So they will have their own sedimentation-based behavior analysis studies, which they float separately. So these are the various components of the water resource operation and planning part, which will involve different studies, which probably you are from this field, you know, or you're more technical than me. So you probably understand what kind of, these are the projects which will come up across different states within NHP. Some will be floated by Central Water Commission and some will be floated by the state department depending upon their requirement. So as I mentioned earlier, National Hydrology Project is also, you can say, linked to the National Aquifer Mapping Project. Reason being, groundwater is one of the important component. So data will also flow in through the National Aquifer Mapping Project, which Central Groundwater Board is running in India. Another important component of the overall National Hydrology Project is the capacity building component, which involves, as part of this, they have initially thought of setting up 3 centers of excellence across India, one in South India, one in western part, and one in eastern part. The main function of the center of excellence will be to address the regional issues and develop capacity in the region itself to address some of their issues going forward. As of now, the Government of India, Central Water Commission, and the key agency, National Institute of Hydrology, is in the process of collaborating with universities and institutions across the world so that they have a good pipeline. When they start sending people for training and capacity building, they are actually preparing the roadmap for that. These courses that they're looking at could be short-term courses, 3 to 4 weeks, and also longer-term courses. In fact, one of the things which has been talked about in the meetings is to develop a 2-year master's program in international water resource, integrated water resources management, primarily focusing on the environmental and social point of view. The existing courses that is available in India is primarily more on the structural engineering component, whereas they would like to bring the management angle into it. So that's one big change in the train capacity building part, which World Bank and Ministry of Water is looking at. I'll quickly run you through the different opportunities which has been floated till date in National Hydrology Project. The biggest one is they are in the process of appointing a project management unit at the federal level. 3 firms have been shortlisted. If you want to know the name, it's Mott MacDonald, Eptisa from Spain, and CH2ML. Hopefully the results will be out by end of May, who is going to be appointed as technical and management consulting. The main role of this PMU will be, they will be the one specifying the equipment which will be installed in the states to collect the data with regards to hydrometeorology. This is a big budget project which will run for 8 years. Then as part of the basin planning which will be done by the Central Water Commission at the macro level, we saw one EOI which was floated for 3 basins in one package, Krishna, Godavari and Mahanadi, which got closed in January. And we expect at least 10 similar packages to cover all the 20 river basins that we saw in the first slide for the basin planning, which will be done by Central Water Commission. So expected to be out. Each package will be in the range of around $5 to $6 million as per the design and procurement plan of the World Bank. Then, as I mentioned, there will be purpose-driven studies. These will be very, very state-specific, mostly less than $1 million studies, which will be floated by states. States have already given their activity plan to the World Bank and Ministry of Water what they are going to do in the financial year 2017-18. So we can hope the tenders from or EOIs from the states will be floated by June or July once the TAMC comes on board. Then for those people who are also interested in the topographic survey, capacity building, and also on hydrometeorological network installations, a topographic survey budget has been allocated 60 million as of now, which tender is expected to be floated by June, July. That's what the expectation is. On the capacity building side, as I mentioned, Central Water Commission has already initiated a discussion with universities and institutions across the globe. And for those who are primarily interested in hydrometeorological network installations, it's a big area, big budget project. These will be floated by State Water Resources Department once the TAMC comes on board. So expect these tenders to be out not before September 2017, and then you have to keep track of each and every tender which will come. The main feature of these tenders for installation will be it involves installation and operation maintenance for 8 years. So idea was to get quality equipments, not the low quality one, and have a responsibility of operation and maintenance for next 8 years. And then additional 2 years will be given depending upon the state's approval. Then the next big project, as I mentioned, is the Maharashtra Climate Resilience Project. The idea was to help farmers who are fighting up with the droughts and help them improve their farm income by adoption of technologies and mitigation in how they can address the issues of groundwater and how they can help improve the groundwater level by more managed aquifer recharge or other interventions that is required either through rainwater harvesting or any other solutions. This is a big project, very you can say early stage. So if you are interested, this is the time to be into the game, start meeting people, start meeting the stakeholders and present your capabilities. This does involve people who are also interested in the agriculture value chain market. Ideally is to help improve farmers' income and giving them a linkage to the market, but it has a major component of how you can use the precipitation water in helping them recharge their groundwater. The project is expected to be approved by end of May. That's what, and it will be spread across 4,000 villages in Maharashtra, covering across 8 districts. Then the Jammu and Kashmir project, Jhelum and Tawi flood recovery project. This is 100% funded from the World Bank, no contribution from states, no contribution from central government. This has got various components primarily to address and set up a disaster resilience management center in Jammu so as to stop the loss of life and damage to the property which happened in 2014. A majority part of this fund will go towards building of critical infrastructure, but also around having a flood warning system in place, having disaster risk management capacity in place, and let have an emergency response system. Everything has a budget, but major obviously it will go towards building infrastructure with regards to the disaster management. Capacity building, of course, is part of each and every World Bank project, as you are aware of. We saw 2 of the EOIs from this project in Feb and January, each valuing at $4 million Australian, and there are more projects may come up on early warning system and decision support system specific of a smaller size once this feasibility study reports are completed as part of this project. We have seen interest from Australian companies putting EOIs for this. Now, I'll quickly run through the project which are in pipeline apart from the Maharashtra project. So the National Groundwater Improvement Scheme, it's called NGIS. It's a $1 billion funding coming from the World Bank to support the National Aquifer Mapping Project. Idea is this will be a focus primarily around 7 states, but the rest of the states will be supported through the Aquifer Mapping Project which is already running across India. This project is primarily focused around having creation of an institutional and legal framework for groundwater management across the states, and this will have incentive-based mechanism to states. So if states who are good in implementing this and they will be incentivized by giving more funds to have better real-time monitoring of the water quality and water quantity both. This particular National Groundwater Improvement Scheme is more focused on water quantity. Quality is already being taken care by the aquifer mapping project. Again, this is a project in pipeline. This will be expected to get approved by end of April, but I'm sort of taking a more leeway. Hopefully by May it will be approved. Some of the components of the aquifer mapping project, which is already running and will be tendered very shortly, and although already been tendered a couple of projects. As part of this aquifer mapping project, Central Groundwater Board, the key nodal agency who monitors and manages the groundwater resources in India, has going to float tenders to dig up 21,000 observatory borewells across India. These borewells will be 200 to 300 meter deep across all the three kinds of aquifer that India has got: hard rock, soft rock, and alluvial aquifers. That's where it will be done. We saw a few tenders coming in, and these tenders will also be floated going forward. Once these 21,000 borewells will be completed, then they will have a consulting assignment to get data from all these borewells and etc. Develop at least first layer of the aquifer map, which will be further improved in the National Groundwater Improvement Scheme going forward. Then the DRIP project, as I mentioned, phase 2, 1 billion project. The focus will be more on improving the safety and operational performance of selected existing dams across the participating states. So it's expected all the states will participate. It will cover around 4,500 dams across India. The idea is to have rehabilitation of dams and associated infrastructure, institutional capacity building, and focus has been given more on the asset management. So if you have experience in asset management projects and you would like to intervene now, we are happy for you to profile yourself with the key stakeholders, including Central Water Commission and the World Bank, in helping you start sharing your expertise in that field. This project is expected to be online by June or July. We do have time on hand, and this is going to be a big project which will throw up the biggest consulting that will come up in this one is the project management consulting, which will be of around $20 million value. So that's something to keep a lookout for. Then the two smaller project, again in the pipeline, expected to be online by July or August latest. Assam flood management plan, which will cover the Brahmaputra basin. They want to develop, although there is a work going on the macro level basin planning for Brahmaputra, moving slowly, but this is particularly around Assam and neighboring states on having a complete basin modeling planning for the Brahmaputra river. That Brahmaputra river, as some of you may know, but this is known to floods and one of the most unpredictable river, which follows different paths and lead to soil erosion and flooding and erosion of some of the villages overnight. And that's the biggest problem in this area. Flood is a recurring phenomena, and they actually, World Bank and the state government are looking at using this excess water from the flood, how that can be used for irrigation for the longer term. It can be stored. So that's also going to be on the component. You can see a big consulting assignment coming up at the beginning of this project, maybe September or October. We'll keep you posted on the developments. Now, after all this, I'll quickly run through, okay, there are many opportunities on the plate in India. Everybody should look at India as a market, but then how? The question is, one, in Australia, you already have got a strong partnership. You can either collaborate with local consulting firms in India or the multinational firms with whom you're already working in Australia as a market, which are present in Australia as well. You can collaborate with them. That's the best approach. Most of the multinational firms have got offices in India. You can partner with them beforehand since you have experience of working with them. So you know how different firms work together. You can form consortium, and we can then help you maneuver through the process of submitting tenders and identifying few of the local experts if you wish to. For small firms, the best strategy which has worked, I'll not name the firm, but it has really worked, where you form a consortium back in Australia first, and then approach an Indian partner, one to balance out the cost in tender, and so that you increases your chance of winning the tender. Most of these tenders will be evaluated on QCBS, quality cost based method. So 80% weightage is given to technical competencies, 20% to financials. So our suggestion will be focus more on the technical expertise so that you score high on the technical marks. So even if financially you are not the cheapest, you increases your chance of winning the project. For construction project, those people, particularly around the installation of hydromet observation stations or around the dam safety projects, there are different models that work in India. One is either you can partner with a JV company if you don't want to get your hands dirty in India. Partner with a company, lend your qualifications and get a consulting fee once they successfully win the project and let them do the project. There is a reputation risk if the Indian company fail to deliver. So in order to mitigate that, the other model that you can adopt is, again, same model, form a JV, lend the pre-qualification, let the Indian company win the project. You get a success fee and also take up the project supervision role so that your reputation risk is mitigated. And the third model, which is normally I'll not prefer unless and until you have already has a taste of India as a market, how things work, is form a JV and then bid for project straight away and get involved in execution, which is for those people who already have presence in India. Otherwise, it's not for people who want to do business in India, fly in and fly out. You need to be in the market, you need to have good partnerships, and that's the way to move ahead. Preparation is very important. Some of the things, if you wish to start looking at India as a market, one, you already have your capability document, but you need to customize based on the different project that you are targeting in India. It has to be customized, highlighting your key project credential, your key contribution to the project which you have done. And one of the essential documents before you take on the plane and land in India, you need to have project description sheet covering project briefs, approximate cost, and the client name. That is important to get an idea when you discuss with potential partners, when you discuss with the stakeholders or clients in India. They actually are looking at what kind of project you have done, what scale of project you have done. That's what will help you profile your company and get good score going forward. In India, we have a concept of project completion certificate. When you do a project, you get a project completion certificate. This is nothing but a letter from your client saying that your firm has done X project having scope XYZ and the approximate cost. If you don't get these things from your client, you can ask later on as well. Otherwise, the option is you can attach a copy of your work contract along with the payment proof that you have done the project. That will also be considered as equivalent to something called a project completion certificate. And then once you are ready with all these things, then I would suggest then you can come to the market and start talking to people. That's the way forward. The support that we can provide from Austrade and AWP, as we do it now as well, as you may have seen through newsletters from AWP going to your email inboxes, we give you regular updates on upcoming opportunities, EOIs, tenders. We can help you identification of partners, both even within Australia. There are multiple companies that we work with. If you wish us to introduce to them internally as well, we are happy to do that. All the big multinational, be it Dutch, Americans, we have good connections to network with them, the Indian operation particularly. We can help you connect with them, identify them, and get them a partner. We do work with World Bank and National State Water Agencies day in and day out, so we have access to informations. We can help you meet with them, share your expertise. And the key thing is, if you start first, there are a few hiccups in the tender submission and documentation, which we are happy to assist you. What is required in a tendering process in India, what all document you need to submit, how you need to submit, and then we are happy to follow up, and that's what we have been doing, and that's our core work to help you assist and grow in the market. So as I said, the cake is too huge. Everybody will get a pie of it. So you can choose which portion you want to have, the smaller one or the larger one. You want to start from the top or you start from the side. That's all up to you. And we are there to help. And now happy to take any questions. Thank you so much for listening patiently to me.
Thank you very much, Vijay. It's Kay Scoville here, Chair of the Australian Water Partnership, and if I could welcome everyone, we have people around Australia, about 35 people, online or in a very small room in Canberra. So Vijay, we very much appreciated that. Now Shannon, you will be able to tell us who's inviting questions? Yeah. Okay, so we have about 30 minutes for questions. Is there anyone in the room to start with who would have a question of Vijay? Or was he so comprehensive that... Yes, do. If you could identify yourself when you're asking a question, please.
So Simon Tilliard from Alluvium. Thanks Vijay, as always, a very useful presentation. I had a question around the NHP. You mentioned that the state plans, the state have put together tenders that have now gone to the national government. Are they publicly available? Can we see broadly what they are?
They will be available on the World Bank website and India WRM website in a month's time, or maybe early May. But probably we can ask from a state. It's an activity list which they have shared with the World Bank, asking what all they are going to do. So I'll try to get the copy if it is a public document and to be shared.
And we'll put it up on the AWP website as a follow-up. Any further questions in the room? Yes.
Yeah, Peter Warbrick from CSIRO. Vijay, welcome.
Thank
See
you
again. Probably as much an observation as a question is that one of the things we're working our way through at the moment is some of the legal complexities of working in India in terms of taxation arrangements and setting up project offices and so forth. So just noting that there is significant complexity around that. So if one of the ways the AWP could help would be helping partners to share experiences around that and knowledge and procedures and so forth. Legal advice is expensive, and some of it, of course, is commercial in confidence, but some of the principles can be shared. So that would be a useful role, I think, for the AWP to be able to help navigate those of us who may be in a position to think about setting up a base there.
No, I think that's a good comment. As a way forward, when we see few successes on board, but we will request these companies to share their experience. One more point which I just would like to highlight, that in case of any consulting assignment that you get in India, there's a 10% professional fee that you need to pay. But since India and Australia have a dual taxation agreement, so the tax that you pay in India, you can claim it here as well. So that's the only 10%, which is not mentioned anywhere in the document, but the 10% fee that you pay as a professional fee, which client will pay you after deducting 10%, then only they'll pay you the entire amount.
And certainly, Peter, that question of aggregating partner, AWP partner experience in relation to the legal thing, is certainly something that I think we can look at it in AWP and see how we can do that.
Resource base thing.
Yes. I think Tony?
Tony Slatcher. Hi everyone, and thanks Vijay for that terrific overview. Could you, in the National Groundwater project, which is a very large one in the pipeline, you mentioned that it would encompass institutional and legal solutions. Can you just expand a little on what you think is envisaged there? Is that going to be a major part of the project, and is there some institution building plan already in place that we need to know about?
As of now, there's no plan, but on the legal part, first I'll take it. So as of now, the land and water rights in India are sort of not separate. So if you own a piece of land, which used to be the case in Australia long ago, so there's a draft bill pending in the Parliament which is talking about separation of land and water rights. That's going to be a big milestone in implementing the overall National Groundwater Improvement Project. The other thing is on the institutional part of it. As of now, Central Groundwater Board is the custodian, or you can say the overall manager of the groundwater resources in India. There are talks going on merger of having one single body at the federal level, in merging of Central Water Commission, which is the custodian of the surface water, and Central Groundwater Board all together. Parallelly, there is an effort going on at the state level. As of now, water as a subject is managed by 6 departments. So the talks is, instead of starting at the federal level, we'll start at the state level, so that it becomes easy when the budget allocation happens from federal government. It goes to one single department of state, and then this concept will again be merged at the federal level. That's a long shot, but that's where the thing is, and the government of India is thinking on those lines. So if that happens, that will be the best that we can expect from the Indian water reform story.
Thank you, Vijay. For those of our partners who are distributed around Australia and in fact in Delhi or New Delhi, could you please, if you do have a question, type them into the GoToWebinar pane on the right-hand side of your screen. That sometimes we have challenges around voice things, so if you type your question in, Vijay would be very pleased to answer. Any further questions here within Canberra? Well, one of the things that I've been struggling a bit, and we spoke early about it today, Vijay, was the capacity development question, and how that's understood in India and how that's playing out in relation to the NHP. Because different countries have different conceptualizations of what that means. You touched upon education and training at one point, but could you just elaborate a bit on the capacity development elements of the NHP?
Thanks for asking this question. So the capacity development component of National Hydrology Project, it consists of 3 components. First component is more about giving hands-on training to the water engineers involved across the states and at the federal level in implementing the project, so that they are aware of what they are going to implement. They are aware about the basic instrumentation on the hydrometeorological network that's going on. So that's the first basic component of the capacity building that will go. The second part of the capacity building, which will go towards forming some champions of water across states. Because unless and until you have champions within few states, be it the chief engineer level or at the principal secretary level, the overall objective of NHP is difficult to get achieved. So it involves study tools, more of exposure thing, so that these principal secretaries and chief secretary rank officials, when they see good things across the world, they can come back and implement those things, which is one of the core motive of NHP. The third main component of NHP is, which is a longer term engagement on capacity development and hardcore classroom and what you call training on modeling tools and techniques which will be used as part of the overall NHP implementation. So that involves universities, institutions in 3 to 4 week short-term courses as well as 6 months, 1 year courses. These courses will be around, for example, the department which are using the flood modeling tool, they need to know how the flood modeling tool operates. If they are using early forecasting system, how that system operates, so that tomorrow if the consulting firm is out of the picture, they need to know how to handle the entire system, how to manage the entire data center that they have in place, and how they can play with the data going forward. Data can have multiple applications. We're talking about going forward big data, which will may become part of NHP going forward. So it's basically developing capacity in-house so that they can manage and maintain and further improve the overall water network that's getting developed as part of National Hydrology Project. Does it make sense?
Yes, it does.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
Well, ask if additional. I'm Scott Walker from ALS. When it comes to capacity building, is it separate, or is it going to be? Are they going to be embedded in projects like as say modernisation or telemetry system is put in? Is that where you see the capacity building happening at the same time? Because that's kind of a valuable way to do it.
Yeah, so as part of your operation maintenance contract for the hardware hydrometeorological network which will be installed, you also need to give training on operation of these systems to the department, the client's engineer or manager going forward. But that is just more on how the system will operate and more on your equipment. Mm-hmm. The larger part of the capacity building is a separate component which will go at a more macro level, which will be managed by different agencies. At a federal level, it is National Institute of Hydrology which will be the core nodal agency to implement the capacity building project.
Thank you, Vijay. Now, we do have a number of questions that have been typed in. Thank you for that. It's all in 4-point, so I'm going to ask Shannon, who is our Webs Master from AWP, to read the questions out. Shannon?
Thanks, Kate. Lavanya from Queensland Urban Utilities asks, are there any projects regarding drinking water and wastewater in the pipeline?
Thanks, Lavanya. There are many such projects which I deliberately didn't cover in this one. One of the biggest projects in the wastewater front is the National Ganga River Cleaning Project, which is a big project. Total funding is 3.6 billion, including funding from World Bank, Government of India, ADB and JICA. That does involve installation of around 800 to 900 new sewage treatment plants across 112 cities in India along the bank of Ganga. But those projects is going to be on a hybrid annuity PPP based model with a 15 years of operation and maintenance and 3 years for construction. So it means all in all an 18-year project, and that is for companies who are willing to put in their own investment for 15-18 years. That's where our big opportunities in pipeline. So big money on the table. Depends your appetite, how do you wish to take it forward. Apart from this, the Smart City initiative of Government of India has a big focus on urban wastewater management. So probably that is also lead to a lot of new wastewater treatment, sewage treatment, recycling projects coming on board. Particularly of your interest, I think non-revenue water will be of more interest to you as an urban utility, and it is a big pain for most of the utilities in India to address the non-revenue water. And if you go by the projects we see, and we are going to see new projects coming up on mitigating and reducing the non-revenue water from a utility point of view. So if you wish to enter into that space, more than welcome. We can assist you in introducing you to a couple of utilities and how they're trying to look at addressing non-revenue water.
Thank you.
Okay, question from Paul Hart, Metasphere. Do you know how many of the Hydromet observation network sites will require remote battery or solar-powered telemetry as opposed to having mains power available? And do the sites have 3G signal?
Well, most of them will be in the remote areas, and you need to provide security, so probably cover it with a concrete roof or maybe with barbed wires for security purpose. Most of them has to be powered by solar. That's what the observation from state governments. You have GSM network available in all parts of India. I'm not sure about the 3G signal, but 2G is available all across India.
Okay, a question from Rachel from WIA. As you know, the WIA has a number of SME companies who are keen to grow their business in India. I'm wondering if you can discuss more about how to identify and engage with possible partners in India and how Austrade can assist this.
Thanks, Rachel. As I mentioned in my slides also, once your companies are ready with the documentation that is required to look at business in India, we will be more than happy to assist them to identify partners. But as I mentioned earlier, my first preference would be you look for partners within Australia itself first, so that you are able to equip yourself with a major part of the project which are coming up, and then we can help you link up with Indian partners back in India.
Okay, a question from Declan Hearn. Along with the technical capacity, what about the need for capacity and soft skills, particularly around integrating across skill sets and providing leadership and decision making?
Unfortunately, that is not part of the NHP component in any other project. That's something is sort of taken for granted, that these basic skills will be there with the senior bureaucrats and the senior engineers who are involved in implementation of the project.
Okay, one from David Fuller. Can you share which Australian companies have submitted EOIs to the GLM Tawi project?
David, I'll have to ask these companies whether I am able to, authorized to share this information or not, and we'll come back to you. I have an email ID, I will come back to you on this.
Tony McAllister, is there an established network of radar rainfall systems across India, or is there reliance on individual rain gauges?
As of now, the majority reliance is on rain gauges, plus we do have radar systems in place which is owned and operated by Indian Meteorological Department, the counterpart of Bureau in India. And they do, based on that data, they do forecast rainfalls. As part of NHP, the idea is instead of duplicating and adding more rainfall measuring gauges, we'll rather integrate the data coming in from Indian Meteorological Department and the existing data from different departments of state and center, rather than duplicating and putting new systems in place.
And that's the questions from the remote part of it. Now, David Harris, you've got a question?
Yeah, David Harris from Access Water, running a project in India at the moment. There's a lot of focus on data acquisition, catchment hydrology, a lot of modelling, a lot of technical acquisition. That's going to translate into institutional reform and actual action on the ground to address some of these pretty ordinary issues that exist. What are the institutional arrangements? Who's actually responsible? Because it's a federation with a lot of states. If we're actually going about institutional reform and management across borders, who has the constitutional responsibility, in fact, for implementing?
Good question. Probably I may not be able to answer it fully as of now, but if you look at the structure of the implementation of the National Hydrology Project, they have identified the key nodal agency who will take the ownership of implementation and also further improvement going forward. For example, for the capacity building, National Institute of Hydrology has been nominated as a key agency who will sort of consolidate all the capacity building requirement at the state level and federal level. Similarly, for equipment, all the equipment that's going to be used for hydrometeorological network at CWPRS from Pune. So similarly, there are some of the existing institutions, but my hope is going forward they will have to come up with new institutions who can take the ownership, cross-boundary ownership, that is important, and which state also infuse their faith into that particular institution. Otherwise,
sort of coordinating.
So that may come up. As of now, they're saying at least let's get the first step done. Let's have the data coming in, and we'll move on to the next step.
Vijay, just another one from Lavanya Urban Utilities. Are there any existing partnership models for universities and client organisations?
Haven't seen any yet in India as a market, although universities are working with a couple of municipal council on that front, but these are mostly research projects and small scale projects. But probably I think we had some of the people from Queensland University of Technology visited India almost 7-8 months ago to look at some of the partnership between council level. So that's something which we can explore going forward.
It would be, perhaps at Trussell here, fair to say that some partnership models with universities take the MOU route, so they sign an agreement, and that opens up the opportunity to then begin a discussion about what we'll do together.
Yeah.
Just a clarification that just referring to existing models that universities can provide expertise in. Elaborate.
I haven't come across any such model, but one thing which you can look at is probably as a couple of your experts, they can provide individual expertise into projects coming up as part of smart cities and where non-revenue water management, or you can say improving the water revenue for utilities, could be a question. Some of your individual experts can join hands with these companies.
Just a question from Tony McAllister, Water Technology. Can you expand on some of the receiving water quality opportunities, and are these addressing state or federal requirements and guidelines?
Okay. Tony, on the water quality front, National Aquifer Mapping Project is one of the main projects driving the water quality in the groundwater primarily. Otherwise, maintaining water quality in the river is the task of EPA, which we call them Central Pollution Control Board in India, and they are also working closely. So all the data on the water quality which will go in as part of the National Hydrology Project will either come from Central Pollution Control Board, the equivalent of EPAs in India, and although it's not mandated, but Central Water Commission also collects water quality data. There will be a few specific projects on collection of water quality data across surface water bodies and groundwater bodies that we can foresee going forward, particularly in the Ganga River Basin as well. So we'll keep you posted if any specific water quality opportunities comes on board.
So the Clean Ganga project has a fairly strong focus around water quality.
Yes. So in the Clean Ganga, they are installing 130 water quality measuring instrument, 113 across the whole basin, and then they will collect data on a real-time basis coming up from these and analyzing those data, and then accordingly take action based on this data. Plus, all the industries along the bank of Ganga has been mandated to put online affluent monitoring station at the exit gate of their factory premises, which will be linked to the server of EPAs for more stricter monitoring.
So I suspect the next issue around water quality will be these industry clusters on the Ganga. The STPs will address wastewater from the urban centres, but the industry clusters, tanneries, sugar, brewing, clothing, textiles.
So we have seen at least a very good, I'll say, strong environmental activism in India in the last 6 months or 1 year, thanks to National Green Tribunal, which is the main body spearheading these environmental regulations. And we have saw closer notice being served to industries, heavy penalties being imposed on these industries for polluting. So that I say, and plus the regulation has been very strict. And one more information, the National Mission for Clean Ganga, they have been given the status of an authority. Authority means they have been given power under the environmental law in India to impose penalty on any industry polluting in the river. In fact, they have power that even if you as an individual are throwing any garbage in the Ganga River, they can send you to jail and with a financial penalty. That kind of power has been given. The question is when they wake up and start exercising these powers. But that's a new development which happened in October with a complete authority power, independent authority reporting to a committee headed by Prime Minister of India.
So do they also start to look at working with companies to try and reduce pollution so that they don't have to prosecute them?
As of now, what they're saying is they're asking companies to comply with existing pollution norms. If they're not complying, they are being served closer notice. If they are complying and they are facing a challenge, then they are most welcome. They can come up, propose solution. There is funding available. Funding is not a question mark. But industries have to come forward and say, look, X amount of funding is required. We can give you X, half of X. We need X from you. So that's the kind of thing that's going forward, moving on. But hope so. In the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have some improvement in the Ganga water quality.
Any further questions in the room?
Yeah, but just so indeed it was a very big take. It's a very large portfolio of projects with a substantial amount of money, but also the timelines seem quite tight also. So if we use the Ganga portfolio as a guide, what's your judgment as to what we can see in terms of how much of the scope comes to pass according to the timelines, and what should we expect as partners looking in around how this might come to pass?
Going by the track record, these timelines you can add plus 6 months or a year.
Okay,
right.
Yeah.
This does happen, depending, because even NHP is running at least 1 year behind the schedule. So these timelines, World Bank does approve the project, but when it comes to actual project being floated by State Department or Ministry of Water, Government of India, that does get involved in some of the administrative hurdles, and there is delay. So although there's a lot many projects, but you do get enough time to respond. That's something.
Yeah, and again, intelligence on delays is as useful as knowing when things are coming to market as well.
Yep. So as suggested by you, probably we can do going forward such kind of webinars probably after every quarter or every 4 months to keep update on what's happening on the project, any delay in this project, and also as you said, the taxes and the legal point.
Tony here. And excuse me for asking questions that are the result of me being quite new to this AWP internal sort of process. But the first question I have is, how do people get more information about each of these activities? Is this something which you provide directly to us, or we generate inside AWP? You know, how does that work? And the second question, sort of related to that, is if partners have an interest in participating, is that best sort of organised in the first instance within AWP, or do we come independently to you, or can anything work? So just how does all this, you know, if people want to take forward some of the ideas that you've just presented to us, what really should be the next step?
Well, Vijay, as Austrade is a member, is a partner of AWP. And we've expressed that partnership through Vijay using AWP news feeds as an avenue for telling the AWP community what's coming up, etc. We will, of course, put this up, or the webinar and a record of it. But Vijay, you've said on a number of occasions that you're open to receiving requests and questions from AWP partners. You're happy to take those direct?
Yeah, I'm happy to take direct queries, but as mentioned, we do share through AWP network any opportunities coming on board, and if any specific issues are to be addressed, the companies do approach us directly as Austrade if any technical queries are required, any assistance is required as part of their submission of the EOIs or tenders.
And if there were a need amongst our partners, for example, Peter is saying, well, perhaps partners should put their heads together on the legal questions. While we're a small outfit and can't organise events, there may be possibilities to invite partners who are interested in a particular aspect. If there's enough partners, then I can't see why we couldn't put on a webinar, Shannon, to have partners. Physically meeting is just too hard, and I think everyone's very busy. But I think if there was enough demand from our partners for a sharing and a collaboration around something that's quite tangible, like legal, then AWP would be open to that and open to arranging a webinar to, because we found when we first started trying to bring together partners who'd been working in China, it was invaluable to pool an experience. It was kind of like the benefits of collaboration are greater than competition if you care about Australia's entry into the Chinese market. So we're open to that, so it would be just a matter of sending me an email if you think it's important enough, and we can aggregate interest across the partnership.
Sure. There's another question from Tony.
Yeah, maybe just add.
Yeah.
So draws off that one. That's all right. Then we can go to Tony.
Yeah.
To Simon from Alluvium. You mentioned that there's already been a couple of AWP activities that have fed into the NHP. Is there any more potentials in the pipeline in terms of AWP sort of bolt-ons into the various projects that Vijay has?
Well, there is one that is in very early stages. AWP was up recently in India, and with Vijay's help, we did have conversations, not myself personally, but AWP people had conversations with the head of the NHP implementation group, and one of the questions that arose out of that was, could iSwarm help frame a capacity development initiative? Now, it isn't a matter of iSwarm delivering. The way AWP works is, and certainly we don't deliver, our partners deliver. But there are discussions underway of how could iSwarm help AWP as a partnership respond to this request. And so that's active at the moment. And we would want to go back to India and just test out whether our understanding of the need is accurate. Vijay, is there anything further, because Darryl Day's here, he had the conversation, but is there anything further you'd want to add on that interaction, and it's a kind of pipeline thing, but unformed.
Yeah, I think it is as of now unformed, but we'll further demystify going forward and we'll inform.
Darryl, do you want to add anything?
No, I think it's very early, but they've identified that whilst a number of project elements, including capacity development, there is a need for some broader capacity development, particularly in the institutions that's being set up, and particularly in some of the decision making that will be needed for managing these systems.
Yeah. So on behalf of AWP, I sworn we'll attempt to coordinate that and liaise with Vijay, and then we'll share it with the whole partnership.
Perhaps add that Russell here, that AWP has also exploring engagement in POCRA, this Maharashtra project on climate resilient agriculture. And I noticed that the two people who participated have just popped up.
Clive and Uday.
Clive and Uday. They were the two AWP people who went to one of the early design workshops. It's still taking shape. It's not going to be to the board in May, as you indicated. It's probably
that's the expected one, yeah.
And AWP is struggling a little to know how much water there is in it. There's certainly a lot of agriculture, and ACR is showing considerable interest, and it'll possibly be a great opportunity for ACR. As Clive may wish to, he can't comment, but he can perhaps type. So there's still a bit of a question mark about the water element of this project. So we're exploring that, but it is giving us a better understanding of what the project's about, and as soon as we build that understanding, we'll certainly share that as well.
Shannon, do you want to read Clive's question?
Clive, just on a clear statement on the tax situation is critical, as that is currently holding up some joint projects.
So probably we can look at holding a similar webinar on tax implications. Just to clarify, probably it could be a write-up that we can prepare, share that with the members if the webinar in short term is not possible.
So we join to that, so the joint process.
Indeed, it's a critical part.
Yeah.
To understand how to go about that legally.
Sure. Taking the Tony's question, payment, especially this, if it is a state government funded project, Tony, there are challenges on payments and delayed payments. We recently helped, not recently, almost a year ago, on a payment got stuck for a SMEC, and we helped SMEC realize that payment through meeting with the head of the department a couple of times. But in these World Bank projects, thankfully we have a recourse. We can always go back to the team leader in the World Bank saying that, look, they are holding up the payment. So that recourse is always there, especially in the World Bank projects and ADB project, which is a big comfort. Reservice project totally funded by state governments.
Just a question for Uday. A large number of projects seem to be World Bank funded. Webinar on the tender application processes would be useful.
Yeah, Uday, we are holding a webinar again, hopefully in end of May or beginning of June on the World Bank funding process and the tendering application process. We'll keep you in the loop once the dates are finalized.
Yeah, just a question, a comment from Kumar. What Russell said about POCRA is correct, mostly agriculture. However, there are some very significant watershed issues for water resources management, which you would expect to come through NHP and GMIP.
So there are questions, Shannon? That's it? Okay, well I think, unless there's any other questions in the room, I think we can draw the webinar to close. Can I firstly and most importantly thank you, Vijay, very much. We've generated demand for further engagement, so you're not going to just go home. So thank you. It's incredibly helpful to have this first-hand information and whole of India perspective, which we often don't achieve. And I thank all our partners, wherever you are in the world, for joining us. And of course, thank the people in the room. We will put this Vijay's presentation, you can be DJ if you like. We'll put Vijay's presentation and a PowerPoint up on the AWP
partner portal.
Through the partner portal, and we've also agreed that we'll do a short summary note, which would be just a written note that can accompany that, so that everyone understands and doesn't have to sit there and listen if they read faster than they listen. Can I thank you, Shannon and Raymond in the team, AWP team, for setting all this up, and hope everyone has a terrific weekend, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.